In this week's episode, Frank sits down with Mike Diachyshyn, General Manager and Chief Inspector of Sharptail Inspection Services, to discuss his journey from being an inspector to creating his vision of what an inspection company should be to fill some of the voids he perceived were present in the industry. Here we go. Mike, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen each other, hey?
Yes, for sure.
Definitely. Thanks for joining me today. Scott had some family stuff. He couldn't make it. I know we had to shuffle the time around a little bit, but we still made it.
100%. I'm a little nervous here, first time on a podcast, but you know you made it in the industry when you're on Frankie's podcast and on the TA Ragers Snapchat group. So I feel good. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, I'm actually pretty excited to talk to you. I've actually was thinking about getting you in quite a bit. I know you started Sharptail Inspection Services, which is kind of like almost, I guess maybe mine and Scott's dream, but also, you know, it's something in the back of the mind of a lot of contract inspectors of like actually opening up their own inspection company, hiring people. Personally, I like the idea of hiring people and providing jobs for locals, well, not locals, but just people across Canada or whoever wants to work. I don't want to pigeonhole myself there, but like just providing jobs for people so they can go out and serve their community, wherever it would be, and provide for their families. Before we get into that, though, we should probably do a little introduction about yourself. Why don't you tell us how you got in the industry, maybe some tickets that you're proud to hold, or anything else you think our listeners might want to hear?
Yeah, so I got pretty lucky. I kind of fell into the industry. Right out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do. So just searching for, what to do, where to go to school. So my brother-in-law, people out there might know him, Keith Chizin, he was taking the program, materials engineering at NAIT. So didn't know what I wanted to do. They had a career day or buddy type program. So I got to go to NAIT and sit in for a day and kind of see what that program was about. So really good opportunity because you knew nothing about the industry up until that point, and just seeing some of the programs that they were teaching and the classes, it was like, well, this is kind of interesting to me. And as you know, our industry is very tight, and there's not much known about it. So just started asking questions, and I found actually I had a bunch of people that I knew in the space, but nobody was really talking about it. So once you start peeling back the onion, it's like, okay, I know some people, ask them some questions. They liked the industry. They liked what they were doing. So I signed up and took that 2-year program at NAIT. And the good thing about that program is they have summer student jobs.
Yeah.
So I applied for, all of them. And I was going to take the first job that came my way. And I'll probably talk about this a few times, but just got lucky. And there's 2 places in Edmonton that I'm sure they still do it, is they hire summer students, Petro-Canada at the time, Esso, both refineries in town here.
Yeah.
And they both interviewed at the same time, and I did okay and got a call back. And for me, I was just taking the first thing that kind of popped up.
Yeah.
And about 30 minutes after the first call, the second interview called me and offered me a job too. And I, being young and excited, I thought it was actually the first place calling a second time.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to turn down Esso, and I got a summer student job at Petro-Canada. So from there, I worked the summer, kind of seen it as, this is almost like an internship. I enjoyed working there. It was a really good environment. And I could see that they were probably going to be hiring, out of school. So got lucky out of school. They were hiring and kind of fell right into a plant inspection type environment right off the hop. And a little bit tough to do. Like, I know those jobs are out there, but sometimes the guy's got to put some time in industry before he can land one of those cushy gigs or
yeah.
And that's, I think, actually where we met way back when you were out there too, helping out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's something we talked about too when I think our first episode of this new season, I think it was episode 16, and our season 1 recap is how to get in the industry. And that was taking some of the NAPE programs and getting the internships. But, those 2 facilities are located within Edmonton, and they're really good facilities. They have really good inspectors there, and they're really good at teaching people how to become good inspectors, right?
100%.
And if you can land that resident job in there, it is something to be desired. I also had the pleasure of meeting your younger brother as a intern there.
Yeah, that's right.
I probably wasn't as nice as it could have been a bit nicer to him, but
all good. Paul has an effect on people.
He was. He's a fine young man, and I think he's turned out to do pretty well for himself as well as an inspector and stuff. So it's good to see. And I think, it was fun teaching him and
Mark Sotner, I think.
Mark, they were fun to take out into the plant and just watching them kind of look at stuff and scratch their heads and stuff. Even I was still pretty new at that time as well, right? So it was pretty neat. So
when I got to work there, it was an incubator. Like they... now I think it's very competitive out there. It's a great environment to be in, but at the time it was one of the lower, placements out there. But for myself, it was, a learning incubator or environment where you got to see lots of different things, and they trained you. Plus, the people that worked there were super knowledgeable, so you got to absorb from all these experts out in the industry. So I was really excited to start off there, and they trained you as much as you want. So that was my biggest perks were, the learning experience, the training, and it was a great place to see industry, get to travel, get to go to turnarounds all over the place. But once you're in that environment, you always start, okay, what's the next step, or where do you go from here? So I was lucky that they, trained me up both ticket-wise and experience-wise to get to a point where you can feel like, okay, maybe I can, maybe I can go on my own and contract if that's something you want to do. Yeah, I think actually, well, before that, I want to say, though at that facility, the 2 facilities in Edmonton and some of the facilities in Fort Saskatchewan, especially the upgrading and the refineries, you have a chance to look at all the damage mechanisms basically in the book. 100%, yeah. Right? And you don't even know how good you got it until you go away from those places. Yeah. Because it was years later that I realized, oh wow, you got to see, most things in 571. Yeah. When I wrote that test, I was like, oh, we dealt with this, or you've seen that here, or this was at this problem at this point in time. So, really, really neat place to learn and put time in. So, I always would tell, other people was like, okay, you've been there for whatever, 5 years or 8 years, but you get to work maybe 2 turnarounds a year. Whereas somebody in a different industry that's only got a turnaround every 5 years doesn't have that same level of experience, even though the years might be lower. Yeah. Especially working in a gas plant or something like that. But even in a gas plant, you still do get some good exposure. So I don't want to knock them. No. Yeah. But it's different. It's totally different. And different types of corrosion. So it's neat to see different things. And while I was there, the guys that I worked with were excellent. Like I looking back, it's like that was probably one of the best supervisors I had. The chief inspector was Dwayne Teed at the time. And he really just understood his team. It was built well, where it was like a diamond. Everybody had their own specialty. You can go to people for different experiences or problems. So, looking back, couldn't have learned better. And they also understood too that, maybe it wasn't the highest paying job out there. So, they let you, if you wanted to, work a turnaround on your days off, if it wasn't in that industry, they were pretty open to a discussion where, okay, maybe a guy can go out there and see some different things, but still be in bounds with the work environment.
Yeah. Air quotes vacation, right? Working vacation.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really good though, because not only does it provide you with some value and a little bit of extra money in your pocket, you come back with some more knowledge, armed with some more knowledge from you. Learn so much every turnaround, even though you go into the turnaround like, okay, we're going for another turnaround, but like there's always something new you see in a turnaround.
Especially working in different industries, because it might be similar, it's pots and pans, but different types of corrosion or different challenges. So, when you get outside your bubble, you take the blinders off and you start seeing things in a different angle, and then you can take them back to your normal job and maybe apply them. So doing those things, and it was a multinational company, getting to travel to different places, because a crude unit here is the same as a crude unit over there, but maybe it's seeing a different feedstock. So different problems, and you got to meet your peers, different parts of the company across the country, so you can bounce questions off them. So it was just a great learning environment for myself, and really enjoyed my time there. But myself, I was always kind of setting the next goal or next, what I wanted to do. And in the back of my mind, I always kind of felt like, maybe there's something a little bit more. Maybe a guy can work on his own, right?
Yeah, actually, I do remember you had almost like every API certificate. You like had the API like tank Manwatch certification.
Training was really good over there for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an expert in any one of those, but I have a working knowledge in a lot of different API tickets.
I remember like seeing all the tickets you had, and I was like, how the hell does this guy keep all that in that head? Like, I learned one thing, something's got to come out usually. So no, that's good. So, obviously having exposure to kind of that type of experience and going through NAIT and kind of learning the basics. I like to say, post-secondary and even apprenticeships and up to your journeyman ticket, you learn the basics just to walk in the door. Like a lot of people think, well, I have my ticket, I should be able to, get top dollar instantly. Like, no, you learn what the minimum requirement is to even be a part of that club, right? That's how I look at it. So after all that experience, I'm thinking you must have saw something over the years, even as you branched out. I think you went from an employee to contractor after that, right?
Correct. Yeah. And just to back up a little bit, you're 100% right that NAIT is like the base layer of your pyramid, where it's teaching you all sorts of different things, because coming out of this, that schooling, there's so many different paths a guy could take. I just, got lucky and kind of fell into one that I really liked on that API kind of path. But the more training you get, the more experience you can maybe get, and just broadens your vision. So when I was there, I made sure, you can't reach API for a while without some experience. So got the NDT tickets, which, looking back was like now great, because if I need to go do a little LPI job, you have that in the back pocket. I know there's some people out there that may think, I don't need to do NDT, but having it doesn't take anything away from you. But not having it, even though maybe everything there is to know about LPI, if you don't have the ticket, you technically shouldn't be doing it, or in the eyes of a client. So I was lucky that I wasn't thinking too much of myself, where you don't want to write everything. So I wrote a lot of those NDT or entry level 1 tickets early on, and then got to progress to like some API tickets. So sorry for backing up, but that was just a little more of the backstory about some of the different levels of training a guy can get early on. But I did see a need, or a want, just personally, to maybe work for myself. And in the back of my head, I always said, well, once I'm at a maybe certain level of experience, or have this many contacts, or maybe get a certain ticket. So in my brain, I just said, when I get my national board, maybe I'll see what opportunities are out there to go contracting. Luck behold, after I had that ticket, it wasn't long after that, knock on the door came, or the phone rang, where it was like, hey, there's an opportunity to go contracting. Yeah. Do you want to take it? So it took some thinking because, you put some time in at a place and, you get to work around really good guys. So it's sometimes a hard decision to make.
Yeah.
But for me at the time, the industry was very busy and, the pay increase was more than I was making, and felt like I had just the right amount of experience and put the amount of time in to kind of just, hang a shingle. So, Len Adler was the guy actually that called me.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, come up to Synovus, contract on a 7-and-7 shift. So it was almost like a half step or like a baby step out of the employee role to be on my own.
Yeah, well, it helps when you know somebody. But actually, I'm curious, how come the national board was your like, okay, I'm ready to be a contractor now? Or is it just like, I don't want to pay to get this ticket, I'll let the company pay for it?
Well, it wasn't so much that. It was more of, I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I want to be able to kind of look at anything, because the more tickets you had, the easier it is to get on a turnaround or go do a job where maybe they want you to have XYZ. So I just wanted to have a really nice broad level of certification, so that sky's the limits. I can do whatever you want.
Well, also what I was thinking when you're saying that is like, when you're young, you just want to snap up as many tickets you can, because that's always another pay increase, right? Especially being an employee or something of an NDE company, or even we'll say an energy producer. Any other ticket or any other certification you can get is going to be a little bump up in pay, because you're providing more value to the company. And that's something that you don't always quite see at that time. It's like, well, I just want a pay increase, where you don't see that it'll start paying dividends like a decade down the road that you have that ticket, right?
When I was doing it, it was a little different. They weren't bumping it up every time. But in the long run, yes, it definitely helps out. But, it comes to a point where you hit a max and it kind of doesn't really matter. But, if a company's paying you to get certification, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, for sure.
So for myself, it just, it separated me from the next guy. So that was kind of my intent. And National Board was just the one I picked as, okay, I'm probably not going to get any more beyond that, because I, had a bunch other ones before that. So it was just a line in the sand that I kind of made, and got lucky with a phone call. So,
all right. So are you are you registered with National Board, or is that you're just talking about ISI, like IPBV?
Correct. Yeah. So in Alberta here, you can only, get that if you work for ABSA or your company has, a stamp. So right before I left, Suncor ended up buying Petro-Canada, and I remember me and a couple of the other inspectors that had the National Board were trying to use Fort Max stamp to get ours, but it didn't work that way. So we weren't so lucky to be like an actual commissioned.
Actually, Scott is a commissioned freaking National Board inspector. That lucky bastard there, right? Yeah. So like he's really good with boilers and stuff like that. So good on him. But yeah, if you do need a commissioned National Board inspector, you can talk to Scott. How's that, Scott?
Good deal.
Yeah, you're not even here, and I'm plugging you. So cool. So now moving on to a contractor. Or even as an employee, like, did you see anything that where you're kind of like scratching your head, like, I could probably do this better, or there's something that I can do to actually either help my company, or like maybe had a vision where I could start a company and start fulfilling these kind of things for clients, and kind of like a bigger vision? Or is this something that just went from like employee contractor to, hey, I can actually like get work and start employing people? Like, is that kind of how it went? Well,
when I decided that I was interested in just going on my own, you'd see companies out there, and some of them at the time, it was like, well, if they can do it, with a maybe better attitude or positive spins on things, like if they can do it, I could probably do it. So it was nice to just validate that, okay, it's doable. It probably is hard work, and that's about it. So you kind of need a shot, or you need a window or an opportunity to kind of go out there and do it. And, we were lucky because we were kind of working some holidays, testing the waters, dipping the pinky toe in. And I kind of enjoyed that, moving around to see different things, because some places that, if they're only doing one thing and you come in with a different perspective, it might solve a problem. So I enjoyed doing that. And when I did go on my own, you know, if you're doing things by yourself, one man show for a while, you start thinking, okay, well, maybe I can grow this to be more than that. So, you know, lucky, my brother also is in the industry. So, after being on my own for about a year or two, Paul was working for like a small NDT engineering company, and you know, we got chatting where it's like, you know, I'm working for these guys. You're contracting, you know, I kind of know the upstream space, you know, more of the, you know, refining, big plant space. You know, we can probably team up here and do some damage.
Yeah.
So, you know, probably over a few beers, it was like, yep, that sounds like a great idea. So we teamed up and, you know, hunted out our first client, somebody to give us a shot. And we were just looking for, you know, somebody that was going to give us a chance. And, you know, being smaller, our overhead's lower, so we're able to do it more efficiently, cheaper. You know, I think on my website it says there, you know, all our guys are multi-ticketed, all that kind of stuff. We were, so that was kind of our angle where it's like, you know, instead of sending 2 guys or 2 crews, you're going to see one person here. Yeah. And we're going to get it done safely, efficiently, and more cost effective than our competition. And they kind of just started snowballing from there. So, yeah, we were off to the races.
No, I think that's pretty neat. So, okay, so you got your first shot. What was, I don't want to talk too much about it, but like, what was that like? Like, it must have been a lot different. Like, when you did your first inspection gigs, you probably went through some of the pimping companies, right? Like some of the bigger guys, right? Or whatever other company. Like, I know some of these larger companies use headhunter firms to do that. Or, you know, you have your bigger, more well-known NDE companies that just kind of, you know, pluck you out, like we talked about in the Claw episode, where you're like, you're just a number, and like you get sent out to go do some random inspection job with like minimal kind of stuff. But after getting your first shot, it was like, it must have been pretty good. But thinking about it now, like, it takes a lot of work. Like, you have to develop inspection reports. You have to develop like a database to like keep all these records. You have to make it accessible to the client, deliver all this stuff on time. Like, that must have, a lot of people would be like, oh, that seems daunting. But like, also to me, like, I think we're on the same level where it's like, it's kind of fun to figure out these problems and kind of see already what the industry's done is like, how can I put my own little twist on this and make it a little bit better? Like, how was that process for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. And going on our own, we've seen some of the challenges or the quirks, you know, working for those bigger companies, and we're like, okay, well, we can do that better. Yeah. So, you know, I was working mainly a 7-on, 7-off shift when we started, me and Paul, and you know, it helps when you have a good partner that you can lean on and kind of bounce stuff off. So I'm good at some things, Paul's good at, you know, things I'm not good at. So, you know, our team worked well. So I was, you know, lucky again to have a really good partner, you know, going down this journey and working that 7-on, 7-off shift. It was like, okay, you're working for your 7 days on, but, you know, in the nights you're preparing for your 7 days when you're off, which you're going to go, you know, do more work. Yeah. So pretty cautious at the beginning, but, you know, I think our first client, you know, when we were bidding the job, we wanted, you know, 100 LSDs we were going to inspect or something like that. That's what I felt comfortable, you know, getting done in the whatever time period they gave us, 6 months or so. And where my brother was more like, no, we want to, you know, whatever they're going to give us, let's go out there and get her done. So kind of got pushed into the deep end, and you just got to go with it and roll with the punches. So before that, though, you know, you're developing your safety programs, you're developing your report template. Yeah. But, you know, we are very nimble. So if, you know, our clients want to use their own form or their own sheet or their own report, it's whatever they want. Whereas I know some companies out there are pretty rigid where this is what you're getting. Yeah. So that was more our spin, whereas we're, you know, cheap, fast, better than our competitors. And we're not going to tell you no. We're going to, you know, work with you so that you're getting the end product that you want. So that was our pitch.
Yeah. Well, I find it's a weird kind of like, spectrum of reporting. Like, obviously you guys developed your own reports and you're like, everyone's going to love these reports. And then you go to a client and they say, no, use our report. And it's going to be like a half a page check sheet where you're like, this tells you no information. Like, what's the point of even doing this? Or there's the other end of the spectrum where it's like 10 pages long and they're like, okay, you need to check every like stud and like document which grade each like stud and nut is on there. And you're like, why do you need all this information? Like, this could be like a one sentence kind of checkbox kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of different forms out there. We've seen a lot of them. So, we try and work with clients to try and, maybe recommend or guide them, because at the end of the day, it's, their equipment. So we're not there to, resist, but to recommend maybe a better way of doing it. And if they want to go with it, great. If not, we kind of will use whatever they want. But we're noticing more and more, like everything's going electronic.
Yeah.
So we're working with a company actually to kind of develop a online kind of check tool. So we're trying to, get with technology and the latest and greatest things, always evolving. So,
when I was working with Scott Fong, for MTL inspection, like right when I first started, that was like the first kind of thing we talked about was like, why don't we have iPads with like electronic check sheets we can upload to the cloud? We didn't realize that like the infrastructure wasn't quite there to execute that yet. Like, it's just starting to get there, right?
That's right. I think we're at the cusp of it. I think, in 2 years we'll talk about paper and we'll laugh, right?
Yeah. So it is pretty neat to see that.
You were 10 years ahead of your game there, Frankie.
Wow. If I was any smarter, I would have actually started developing that, right? I was still too young and wild to get on that. But like something like that does add value, but also like it needs to be done the right way, else it's going to be useless. Personally, I still like going out there with paper and taking notes and typing it up. I like taking photos with my Olympus frickin' TG6 because it takes frickin' the best photos, in my opinion. And I just like reporting. Whatever report template they want me to write on, for sure, that's fine. But like, as long as I can take my own notes and take my photos and explain whatever I saw the way I like.
I think that's because we're old now. We're like those old guys. Yeah. I enjoy doing the same thing. I'm an Olympic guy too. So it's,
they're the best. Right?
I hear you.
Yeah. So, and I know like going out to some of these plant sites, implementing some of this newer stuff, they're out there in a vessel with an iPad that's pitch black trying to take photos. And you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like that photo adds zero value to it, right?
100%. Yeah, I think in 2 years' time we'll be having a different chat. But I totally agree. The old Olympus, hand bombing some notes on my glove, that's the way to go.
Yeah, exactly, right? Searching for 10 minutes because you left your gloves in the smoke pit. Like, where the heck is that?
That's right.
So, aside from getting your first customer, like what were some other challenges that you guys might have faced in starting the company? Like once you did get that first opportunity, like I don't imagine like any other business, like all of a sudden work just started pouring in. Like you still then had to go maybe ask their permission to say like, look, this is what we did for this company. This is what we can do for your company. Like, is that?
Yeah, the way we started growing was like very strategically, just because we were pretty small, where we didn't want to overwhelm or say no to people. So at the beginning, we didn't really advertise. We weren't really, selling the brand right off the hop, because we were, learning every day different things that needed to be done. So we were lucky that we had a really good client off the hop that was growing kind of with us too. So after we got, the first scope done, here was the second one. And, that rolled into the next year where, it doubled to the point where it's like, okay, we need to hire some guys. It's beyond just the two of us. So, there was my cousin actually who wanted to get in the industry as a helper, was our first hire as
nice.
Yeah. Junior guy, not really knowing anything about the industry. So, it was just nice having somebody you can trust, to go out there and, get the work done with you and, to teach somebody. So, and, I talked about how old we are now. It's, you get to the point in your career where, you start seeing some younger guys come through and you think, oh, that was me, before, I've asked that question. So it's kind of nice to kind of validate where you're at, or, the level of experience you have. So it was good to go out there and, show some experience, and coming from the refining space, working on, say, some upstream, well site, sites, to me, it was great because it was different. And you got to take all that big plant experience to look at, a small separator package and find stuff that maybe the last 2 or 3 guys missed because they were looking at it at a different angle than you were.
Yeah. Yeah. There is some cool stuff, like, obviously maybe some separator stuff, and like the gas stuff is a bit different. The amine units are pretty similar, but it's like almost a shock, like how much either how sour the gas is coming out of the well that they're processing on these little dehy facilities or something like that, or the amount of CO2 that's coming in it. And you may not see that stuff downstream at the refinery, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And
so
you're like,
it's totally cool.
Whoa, yeah.
And it's if you have an open mind and, not think that, oh, I've worked somewhere else and this is like, not that important. If you have a bad perspective, that you shouldn't be doing that work. So, when we started working all over the place, it was just neat to see, because you got to apply things from other places you work to find new things. Because sometimes, you find a Princess Auto hydraulic fitting used for methanol injection that is on a vacuum well, like that could be bad, right? So, and that might have been there for 30 years that, the last few guys missed. So, just neat to get to go out and travel. I think you talked in some other podcasts about you get to see some pretty cool parts of the country.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Awesome. So that's kind of where we were growing when we first got into that space, because, once you're working for one client, the next one across the fence kind of sees you guys out there, or word of mouth starts to travel, that, these guys are doing pretty good. So that's kind of how we started growing when we were, pretty small. So we just kind of were doing more organic kind of growth where it was manageable, because most of that stuff's a list based. You got to the end of the year to do it. So you can kind of juggle things depending on, who's got a compressor outage here or there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we slowly started growing when we first started.
Yeah, no, I still kind of dream about those days where I was just bombing down lease roads, going to well sites, and then, especially in the Rocky Mountain House area and, like around Caroline and stuff like that, where it's like fairly open farm field, and then you got a little separator and a pump jack or something. And then you look out back there and it's just like Rocky Mountains, and you're just like, I'm getting paid to just hang out here. Well, not hang out, but like, this is gorgeous. Like,
yeah, there's some beautiful spots in the province, and even like you go into the prairies and there's coulees and spots that, I got friends that live and farm in that area, and you tell them where you were, which is maybe close to their house, and they don't even know that exists. Because, you get to put some miles in. So, really enjoy that world. And then in the same breath, in a big plant, there's different things to see too. And my guys that are, more heavily upstream focused, when they get to come, say, to, a big refinery turnaround, they're excited too, because, it's different, it's new, and, you can kind of cross share your experiences and your knowledge. So when we got started, that's where, my brother Paul and I really excelled, was, he had a really good experience and knowledge in one space, and I had it in another, and it overlapped, and we were able to kind of cross, 2 big industries in Alberta. So that was lucky for us that, we had that background and the experience to share.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, actually. Like you said, watching someone who mainly does upstream all of a sudden come into a upgrade or a refinery situation, and then sit there and look at a 180-foot tall tower that's 30 feet in diameter, and be like, okay, we're crawling through this thing now, and they're like, holy hell.
Yeah, for sure. But you probably been with guys like that. You share your experience, or some tricks, like start at the top, work your way down.
Okay. Always use gravity. Yeah,
things like that. Where if you go with somebody that's a little experienced or has done it, it becomes like, oh, okay, and 15 days later, that person feels very comfortable in a refinery setting, right?
Yeah, I personally feel like you need at least 2 guys to do the towers that big, right?
100%.
To do them efficiently. I know Scott helped me out last turnaround we were on. I had a similar atmospheric tower to do like that. And it was maybe only 40 trays, right? But it was freaking tall, and it was 30 feet in diameter, and it had the trough trays in between. So it's not like you could just roll across the tray onto the other side of the tower.
That's the worst. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I've been in some big ones where, there's 4 manways and you can't get across. So even 4 dudes, ripping down makes it way better. Cause if you got to go up and out and around, it comes a lot, right?
Oh, you get disoriented, trying to
write the nozzles down, or
writing nozzles, or
the guy before you on night shift writes them wrong.
Yeah, night shift never does that. What are you talking about? Yeah, there is some cool stuff, and even I know at one of the facilities we talked about, they have a huge iso-debutanizer where normally during turnarounds you take a man basket with a crane up to the top, right?
Yeah,
that one's always fun. So, okay, so now that you're growing as a company, you're going to start hiring people. And I think this is where most of our listener base is actually going to start being interested in, because we've had a lot of questions on how do I get hired? How do I move up from either being a CWB inspector to an API guy, or from an NDE tech to API? This is stuff. Now that you're growing as a company and you're looking for some bodies to fill some spaces because you're getting some more contracts, or you guys are feeling more comfortable that you can take on more work. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, if there's anything that I missed.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking for in hiring people? Where, obviously your cousin, I think you said was your first hire, right? I think going with your brother and crossing your knowledge base was a really good idea. And it's also somebody you can pretty much count on, even if you have blowout frickin' brotherly fights or whatever, right? You always have that tie, and you're always going to kind of
100%
rely on each other.
Yeah. So once we're at the point where, okay, we got to hire more guys. The biggest thing that we look for is attitude, right?
Yeah.
Because you can teach the rest. So that's the biggest thing I think in our industry. If somebody's willing to put the time in, or willing to learn, sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want, right? You can start in the industry not knowing anything, because I think day one when I was at the refinery, didn't even know how to climb a ladder, right? Climbing a ladder right behind a guy, because you just don't know. Even though growing up on a farm, maybe that's normal, but coming into the industry knowing nothing to getting to a point where, okay, you can go on your own, or end up hiring some people. The sky's the limit. You can do whatever. So most of it comes down to hard work, or putting that time in to invest in yourself to get to the next level. And when I say I look at some of these younger guys, it's because I've been there. Is because I used to be the guy that you get the one ticket and you think you're worth top rate or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
We were all there.
Yeah.
So circling back, once you actually see a few things and you realize, wow, the more I'm learning here, the more I realize I don't know. Right. So investing in yourself by taking more things, or learning more, or reading more, or going to more turnarounds, just helps you, because you become a better inspector. Yeah. So having the proper attitude, though, is what employers want. So the rest can be taught. So if you're getting into the industry, or maybe you have a couple tickets, putting that hard work in, if you got to go to some place where it's oh crap, I'm going to miss, this weekend fun thing that I had planned. Maybe that's where you're going to see something that you're going to think about for the rest of your career. Right. So, deciding whether, okay, maybe I'm going to put some hard work in now so that, it's easier later, or, in the books on the weekend so that you can study on your own time. Because, some employers don't, want you to get so many tickets all at once, or maybe there's no time, or some sort of factor. So, it usually comes down to, yourself as a person to decide okay, do I want to do this? Right. Do I want to be successful?
Yep.
Because usually that's a limiting factor, but usually we're looking for guys that are, willing to learn, like being in the industry, like the different places you got to go, or, that turnaround circuit, because it's cyclical, right? It's, busy springs, summers maybe normal, and then falls are busy, and then, you get to the winters and it's a little bit more manageable. So, liking that sort of cyclical environment that we work in, those are things that we kind of, try and find.
Yeah. Well, that's actually probably one of the challenges actually owning an inspection company. I know when I worked for some of the smaller companies where it was like turnaround season was good, but then you got to try and find that LSD work or like corrosion survey stuff to kind of fill in between. And not only is it important for inspection companies to do that kind of work, but it's also important for the producers or the owner users to get that stuff done to start planning for turnarounds, right? So like there's a never ending cycle within the actual, job description, either as a resident inspector or as a contractor, depending on where you can kind of get your gig. But like trying to align yourself and like kind of say, go do a couple turnarounds a year to get the turnaround experience while also doing the corrosion stuff is probably the best way to do it, because then you're starting to learn what and why we're doing turnarounds and why we're going into equipment. And then from there, you can start to kind of leak into like scope planning and turnaround planning like that. And then actually start understanding like, okay, we have all this information, let's digest it and turn it into a scope and then execute it in turnaround, and then do the on-stream kind of afterwards follow-up inspections if it's needed, or anything else that needs to be done afterwards to ensure the, I'm doing air quotes here, integrity of the equipment, right?
That's right. And if you can do that work, because like we do some of that where it's like, okay, great. Now a person can actually see the flow, especially if you're entering the industry, to like, okay, why did we do that?
Yeah.
And I really like when our guys are inspecting and then, they're going to go write a test and they're starting to study like, oh, okay, this is what we actually are doing, or this is where I can find it. So it's just neat to see the cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's a great experience for guys if they can get that type of work to kind of understand why we do things.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's very important. So if you are maybe a contractor or new to contracting or an employee, like pay attention to actually why you're doing these things. Even as an NDE tech, like why am I doing UT at this elbow, or why am I, X-raying this shot? Like what am I actually looking for? Are we looking for cracking? Are we looking for erosion? Are we looking for anything else specific that, might be occurring just because of process or because of previous work history or operational history, I guess I should say.
Yeah. And if you're a guy new to the industry or new to contracting and you get teamed up on a turnaround with an old gray hair guy, like that's usually the best scenario, because, if you have a good attitude, that person's going to share with you. Like I got lucky. Everybody probably knows Ron Vanderwood out there. First tower ever. I went through with him, and I didn't know anything. So the guy took the time and showed me things that you don't know unless you kind of go through it or go somebody with some experience. So
yeah, Ron's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. So it's nice to see, like, once you start getting along in the tooth, that you can pass that on too. But it comes down to does a person want to learn? Because I've had other people thinking they know everything, and it's like, well, if you know everything, I guess I don't need to tell you if you're not open-minded, right?
No, for sure. And that kind of, I think we kind of think along the same mind frame where you don't bring that person back out into the plant, because like it's just it's a weird kind of dichotomy while you're sitting there doing that, because they're chirping the whole time. You're like, this is not what's happening.
No.
Like you're looking at this from the wrong angle, and then they're talking to people that they shouldn't be talking to and saying stuff, and you're like, quiet.
Yeah,
quiet.
No, 100%. And even though I got to see quite a few things so far in my career, I always try and go in with cold eyes so that you don't miss anything. And we work all over the country. Sometimes they're not speaking the same languages yet. Yeah. And it's kind of neat because, it's a great test because, you can't read the old report. You're going to go in this piece of equipment that's from the 50s, and maybe you're going to find something new, right? So that's kind of how I go into most of my stuff, where it's like, okay, well, what are we going to find today, right? Open eyes.
Yeah, no, it's really neat. So what else have you discovered in creating an inspection company? Like, how is it dealing with some of those bigger players? Like, is it a challenge to kind of work around them, or work, you're all kind of vying, not always for the same contracts, but it's always kind of like a looming presence where like they can throw money, they can lose money just throwing manpower at it, just to have a truck with their name at that well site or on that site.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely out there. Like big players in our competitors and big players, oil and gas companies, they both have their quirks. As we started to grow, you got competition. You have to bid at some of these bigger players. We just try to sell ourselves differently and be unique. So as we were growing, all of our guys have different multi-tickets that set us apart from our competition. So that's kind of been our strong point is, we have guys that, maybe call them the unicorns that, other people can't find. So, my competition is less because I'm not really chasing the same carrot as those guys. So we're a little bit more strategic, being a little bit smaller and lower cost, able to do things more cost effectively. So, we try and do things different than our competitors, and truly be innovative too.
Yeah. Because
a lot of times that rate sheet is set or that form is set, whereas for us, we're able to bid things, fixed cost or, any which way the client wants to see it to set ourselves apart. Challenges I've seen with, working with some of the bigger companies out there as far as producers is sometimes they're pretty rigid. And I've noticed even like we've been around, I think 10 years now, it's almost gone through a little cycle where everybody's fine using mom and pop, and no, you got to go through body shop. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going back to the mom and pop because that body shop that isn't, in this continent doesn't really care about the service, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, if something bad happens, I can be there, after this podcast. If the call came in, but if you called the body shop, they might not pick up because it's the weekend or it's a holiday.
Yeah.
So that's really where we kind of set ourselves apart. We also like Sharptail, guys like your age, our age. I have a really good pool of subcontractors, a lot of guys that are one-man shows. And, you try and create a buzz or a brand or a work environment so that people want to, work through you if you have the work. So we're able to pull from, I'd say, the best of the best out there in industry. So if you get a big job and they want a certain guy or certain tickets that nobody can find, I got it. Yeah. So that's been our push really.
I would agree with that. I think the network of people that we know, like I don't want to include myself in this. They're pretty top notch, and it's always like an actual pleasure to see these people on turnarounds and actually work with them and like pull from knowledge and share knowledge with them.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoy going to some turnarounds because I get to see my friends like industry friends. So some jobs like, oh, perfect. Even if maybe they're not working for Sharptail or, they're on the list. It's like, oh, great. I get to see these guys that I haven't got to see in a while because we're busy or whatever. And you have a great time because you're feeding off each other. You're able to, you're all thinking the same. You're bouncing stuff off. Everybody's got a good attitude. It's fun. It's great. It's a great industry and to be in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. And like you said, having access to all those guys, that was something that was in the back of my mind. And I'm happy you said it when we were kind of initially started the conversation about hiring. It's like, there's a good pool of contractors that that you can pull from, right? And along with just finding random dudes on the street that want to show up and do good work, right? So it's
and if you worked with a guy and he knows somebody that's also like of the same skill set and like-minded, that's when it starts to grow and expand. So
yeah,
I haven't been in a situation where I couldn't provide X amount of inspectors, but before COVID, we had a huge job where the list of the guys that were going to go to this tournament, I was like, man, this is like all-star list in the industry. This is going to be great. But, things got pushed out and sizing changes. But we have a great list to pull from. So that kind of sets us apart to the point where some of our competitors, usually, knock on the door to be like, hey, we don't got this guy. Can you help us? Right.
Wow, that's good.
Which I don't mind doing because, maybe I'll be in a situation someday where it's got to be reciprocated. So I'd rather work with people than work against them. So I try to grow the brand that way so that it's, respectful and professional, and I like.
No, undoubtedly. And I that's the attitude to have. And even when, I interviewed Cortland from Osprey Inspection. Like that was the exact same attitude he had, whereas he'd rather work with people and help make them stronger to kind of give the industry as a whole a better representation, right? And also put himself out there as someone who's a leader, as opposed to knocking people down or like trash talking them while they're out there saying like, you don't want to go with this guy or blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I worked with him. We helped him do this.
Yeah. People put themselves on a blacklist.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to run people down because our industry is very small. I always want to see people do better and excel themselves. So if somebody's willing to, absorb or learn or whatever, no problem sharing, because, if you're good at what you do, you never have to look for work. That's usually what I tell myself or my guys, because if you have a positive attitude, are competent, are willing to work, are willing to do the job, because you've been in that upstream space. Sometimes the job isn't over at 5:00. It's over when it's done. Yeah. Which might be, well into, the evening, whatever the working hours, for safe work is, but, it's just a different world. So if you go in thinking, oh no, I'm done at 5, like, that might not get you coming back, right? No, and that's exactly what I was thinking when you're saying that. That's one of the big differentiators between like someone who actually wants to be there and provide services for their client, even as a contractor, like a one-man show like Scott and I are, or a service like a full service provider like you are. Like, some people will say, hey, it's 5, the bus is going to the parking lot, I need to catch it. Whereas other people will be like, I would say the people you want to hire are the guys sitting there saying, no, I'll stay, whatever, I got to walk. Oh, you got a truck? You can drive me there at 6:30 or whatever. Yeah. That, like you're still on the clock, right? So it's good. And that's probably a big thing for guys that maybe are on their own or just getting on their own, is like having that flexibility and knowing when to, bite your tongue or be available. Because, one of my long-term subs that works for me all the time, right place, right time, we're on a turnaround. It's like, hey, do you want to come for a week? I think we're on to year 3 or 4 now. Nice. So, and the fellow just has such a positive attitude where it's like, yeah, sure, I'll come, or, perfect, right? Great, I need work. Not, no, or I'll get back to you. Give me some time. Like just, having that flexibility, because, he knows the role he's in. You're a contractor, you got to work when there's work, right? Yep. So if you don't want to do that, maybe contracting isn't the right path. Maybe the 9 to 5 job or something else is a better fit, right? Because there's so many different things you can do in our space. It's just what's going to work for you, or what do you want to do, right? Yeah. You definitely have to choose the path that suits your lifestyle, and it's all right to dip your toe in it a little bit, but like getting set up for contracting is, it's appealing because of the rates, but then you realize all the insurance you have to get. And then like you got to start paying for your own tickets, and you got to keep up with your own training. And then in your case, you got to start getting safety certifications from like accredited organizations, not just, hey, I've got my liability insurance, right? It's like you need I think you're with Core or something like that. Yeah, Core. Yeah. And just onto your thought process there, like Serge Petrovic always says math doesn't lie. And me and him have worked together forever, and he likes penciling things out. So one day working, we actually were talking about, okay, when does it make sense actually not to be a one-man show contractor? Because, you look at guys that have lots of experience as employees, the holidays, the training, you calculate what they're making when they're sitting at their desk, maybe they're making more than the contract guys. So, there's almost an inflection point where it's like, okay, well, maybe at this level years, the employee route is a better, more profitable fit, right? So that's kind of how I took the next step, where it's like, well, okay, you want to be one man show, that's good, but like, what next? Either you try and get some people that work with you, or maybe you go back to doing what you were doing before, right? So you got to pencil it out too.
You definitely do. I was doing those calculations as well, like over the last little bit too, to see.
The nice thing about contracting though is you can do so many different things, right? So if it's working for maybe some other things you got on the go, it's a great fit, right?
Yeah.
So it's everybody's different, right?
Yeah. It's the type of lifestyle you want to live, and also it depends actually where you live too in the country. Like Scott and I always joke, like we know a lot of guys who live out east in like Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and stuff like that, where, the cost of living is considerably less.
Yes,
and you can work 1 and 2 turnarounds a year and live quite comfortably, right? And just kind of chill out for the rest of the year. Whereas if you actually live in some of the Western provinces where the cost of living is a lot higher, like you got to constantly be working to kind of, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, like to maintain air quotes lifestyle or whatever lifestyle you want to live, but it's nothing extravagant. Like you need to be pulling money in even just to pay your taxes and stuff. And a lot of contractors have issues with that. It's paying their corporate, their GST and their personal taxes in on time. Like there's always dudes on the turnaround talking to CRA.
100%. If you're going to go contracting, don't spend money for the first year. Just live like you were before, because there's lots of things that come up that you don't think about. But going back to what you say, the nice thing about what we do is like you can live wherever you want to. So, I know lots of people that do that type of lifestyle where they work the turnaround circuit, or they work their couple gigs to maintain their level of how much they want to work, which is awesome, because what we do, like, you grab your little lunch bag and your flashlight and your camera and you go to work, right? Yeah. So you can go anywhere, which is a big perk for people that want to get into this industry. Like you're not breaking your back. Yes, you got to crawl around some towers and clean manways with your coveralls basically, but it's fun and fairly flexible, right?
Yeah. Mike, what do you think? Have we covered most of it? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Yeah. I do want to talk about the services maybe that Sharptail provides. I think you guys do kind of set a standard for visual inspectors, but then you have, like you said, you have multi-ticketed inspectors to provide the rest of the services, right?
Yeah.
You guys, I'll let you do it.
So we basically... we are an NDT company that also does integrity assessments. So we offer third-party chief inspector services, but our bread and butter is API inspection. So we work with, my guys are all multi-ticketed. They work in multi-industries. Like they're killers out there where they're going out there getting stuff done very efficiently with a really high standard of work. But our biggest thing is, that API 510 stuff, doing turnarounds, doing corrosion survey lists, externals, but, that same guy's doing the NDT.
Yeah.
So, and we've kind of, anything that's kind of specialty or that's coming up in industry, like, piping, there's been big focus on doing piping projects. Like we got kind of a team that goes in, walks the line down, circuitizes it, builds the program, draws it up, puts the points in, does the UT, does the external. And I got one guy he can do it all. So we've seen a need for that, so we'll jump on it. So wherever we can kind of, find a spot that, okay, there's not much people doing this is a requirement, we'll find a person or train that person to be the best that gets it done in a very cost-effective manner. Like some people, we send the bill and they're like, "This is it? Like, you guys should be charging more for this." So, which it gets us more jobs or kind of keeps growing us. So, those are things we kind of excel at. But in the same breath, like we work with a lot of one-man shows or smaller NDT companies. So, you want the best phased array guy? we got that. And I've had oil and gas companies tell me, like, okay, well, this guy's just coming through that, you guys aren't going to do anything. We're still usually reviewing that report or coordinating that work or making that job happen so that the client doesn't need to, lift a finger until they got some results in front of them.
Yeah.
So I've had feedback from some of our clients being like, oh, you guys actually did something, even though these people passed through you. So just because we've sat on the other side of the table as the, client inspector, I know all the little quirks that, bug a guy. So we try and avoid that to make it easier. And so far it's worked. Like, we keep growing, we keep getting new clients and expanding. So that's pretty much what our company does. And we're always adding to the scheme too. Like, the only thing we don't really do is RT right now.
Yeah.
But we've been thinking about adding that to the portfolio here too. It's just, it's a little bit slower in Alberta. There's not as many projects. So I like to just be ready for when that is ready, and then, we jump on it.
Yeah, well, getting certified to handle actual like radioactive sources and stuff, it's no joke. It's a fairly lengthy process for companies to go through that, to get that certification or whatever else they need to be able to own them and then transport them. And like, there's a lot of procedures and stuff that you guys need to set up to ensure that you comply with all the regulations for that.
Yeah. So, but if you see the need coming, or you see a gap, you can always prepare so that you're ready for when you're ready to do it, right? So that's kind of what we've been doing so far, and we just keep growing and expanding and getting our name out there.
So I don't want to put you on too much on the spot with this, but since the last podcast or the last few podcasts, we've been talking about technology integration. Is there anything that Sharptail is doing to integrate technology such as drones or anything like that into your services?
We're not really jumping into the drone space quite yet. Like, I know I listened to you guys' podcast, and I think we're going to get to that point, but I think there's a bunch of hurdles that still need to happen.
Yeah.
So we're not really focusing on that. We're more focusing on getting the reporting more streamlined so that the turnaround's quicker, the billing's instant, all those little things that, take some time, so that it can bring the cost down. Because right now the focus is doing everything for as cost effective as possible. So, we're working with some companies out there where they have some really good, strong tools that do a lot of these things. We're not building them in-house. We're just working with some partners in industry so that, we can provide a better service quicker, with some neat tools that are about to come out.
I like it. I also like how you guys are focusing on the API visual aspect of it. I know it's all the other services are there to complement that, and you provide them, which is good. I don't want to say old school, but like it's hard to find good visual inspectors who actually know process and know what they're looking for and go in there and can write a concise report.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Providing people like that, it's becoming a bit of a lost kind of, I don't want to say a lost, well, maybe I do want to say a lost art, but like it's becoming a service that's getting lost in the shuffle of technology.
Well, and the thing too is like there's a changing of the guard too. Like there's a lot of guys that are exiting the industry that, were pillars or, really good.
Yes. And
there almost seemed to be like maybe a little bit of a gap. So, we're not that old, but, there's a need for that old school looking at something, and that's where we fit in. The best inspection is always, being able to look at something. That's what I find.
No, for sure. And I really liked it's what kind of I was raised on as an inspector was piping circuitization, corrosion circuit implementation, and figuring out what damage mechanisms were affecting these circuits, how to separate them out, and then how to execute the actual implementation of the survey, NDE survey, to figure out what's happening. And I know consistently, and I know you know as well, that when you go to different sites, you just can look at stuff and go, either this is really good or they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and then trying to kind of figure out how to shift them. And you don't really have to shift them, but like trying to figure out how to slide your knowledge in without making making it seem like you're trying to be too cocky about it or change the world when you're presenting them with new information. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Right? Like
I think too, lots of producers though want to get there. Like, some of them are there, some of them are working towards getting there.
Yeah.
So that's nice to see in industry, but I don't think our industry is ever going to die as 5'10" guys. I know there's some producers out there that don't want to enter a piece of equipment. Like that's their goal. Never go in.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good idea. But sometimes you find stuff that are new, like new type of damage mechanism. Like yeah. I've been on turnarounds where this thing has never existed before, or a process has changed that nobody recorded through an MOC. Now there's a new damage mechanism that we weren't looking for that isn't good for this material. So on paper, yes, I think that's a great vision, never to go into something, but you still need somebody to put their eyeballs on it, to touch it, sometimes smell it, to figure out what is actually happening. Because I'd say a lot of the damage mechanisms that bite producers aren't what they thought was going to be there, yeah. Or maybe the operator did something wrong, right? So it's unexpected stuff, right? So I don't think our industry is going to die. I think we will go through a cycle where nobody goes into stuff. There's going to be a lot of failures. We're going to go into more stuff. That's probably what's going to happen. But I just like passing that little bit of knowledge that I was taught down to, the guys that want to learn. So, the guys that work for a company that are up and coming guys, they're going to be great inspectors just because they want to learn and they like to, get out there and see things. So I'm excited for the future, and
good.
Yeah, we got a really good crew, and I'm happy that our company's kind of done what it's done so far.
No, I'm happy to hear that. I like watching my peers succeed at stuff, and it makes me proud to see that everyone's doing such a good job in executing things the way that they foresee, even though I know there's a lot of behind the scenes challenges, and being in the Manwatch required studios, I can definitely appreciate those challenges. So before we sign off here, where can people find you?
So they can go to our website. Our website's sharptailinspection.com.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, on all the social medias, follow us. We've had a really strong push here lately to get our numbers up for followers on the social media. So we're doing lots on there. So definitely sign up to kind of follow us, because we're always showing what we're up to, or the
Perfect.
newest and latest things that we're up to.
No, wonderful. And I guess for the sign off today, something you said, and Scott might like this one, being that we always usually find stuff that we weren't expecting. It's not always in the RBI. And Scott, I know you like it. The RBI said it wasn't there, so it shouldn't be. All right, thanks for listening. See you guys later.